Tonight on Free Minds TV, we catch up with Matt Simon from the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy to give us an update on House Bill 1623, decriminalizing marijuana in the state of New Hampshire. Later, can Canadians cross over the American border and enforce martial law in the case of an emergency? We'll tell you more. We're also going to be getting into this week's Downsizer Dispatch, the mailbag, and a whole lot more when we come back on Free Minds TV. Welcome to Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. As always, I am Toby Islin.
And I'm Nick Michaelevich.
Okay, well, we have talked to Matt Simon a whole lot on Free Minds TV. He is the guy to go to about marijuana policy in the state of New Hampshire. He works tired hours going through, calling up all the representatives, sitting through all the chamber meetings and the subcommittee meetings, and helping to get marijuana reform passed in New Hampshire, because we have some of the most draconian laws when it comes to marijuana here in New Hampshire. Other states like Maine to have decriminalized marijuana and made it legal in small amounts is more like a traffic ticket than anything else. Well, the first step to reform would be to do that here in New Hampshire. So that's what Matt's been trying to do, along with a whole lot of other people over at New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense and other people who are interested in this. We caught up with Matt in Concord, New Hampshire to talk a little bit about what's going on with the bill, when it's going before the House, and how it's doing so far. So let's play the video and see what Matt has to say. In Concord, New Hampshire, to interview Matt Simon from the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy to talk about House Bill 1623, decriminalizing marijuana in the state of New Hampshire. Matt Simon, for people who aren't familiar with it, what is House Bill 1623?
HB 1623 is a bill that is specifically to reduce the penalties for possessing small amounts of marijuana from a Class A misdemeanor to a violation offense. And the big difference there is the criminal record that people get. You know, for a misdemeanor, it's something that'll stay on your record for possibly 3 years or longer if you can't find a judge who will take it off there and keep you from getting a job, keep you from getting student loans. And that penalty seems to be something that's far in excess of what marijuana smoking does to people. If marijuana smoking harms people and the justification for arresting them and convicting them of the crime is to help get them on a better path, this does the opposite. It puts people on a worse path. So we're trying to reduce the penalties for a violation so that the harm of a marijuana arrest is less disruptive to families and neighborhoods and communities.
Are there any precedents of how this has worked in other states?
Absolutely. The state of Maine, our neighbor to the east, decriminalized 1.25 ounces or less of marijuana in 1976. That's the year I was born. And, you know, 31 years later, it's a pretty peaceful place, Maine. They have the same, statistically, there are no real differences between Maine and New Hampshire in how marijuana is used. We do have a difference in how we process people who are caught with marijuana, and we should look to Maine and to the other 11 states that have had success with these policies when we contemplate what we're trying to do here.
All right, so this bill has already made it to committee and through subcommittee. How was it received?
We've had very interesting discussions with the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. And of course, that's a committee that's made up of a lot of current and former law enforcement, and they're kind of the hardest people to convince that we should be reducing marijuana penalties. So we knew that was going to be a tough sell. We didn't really convince the committee. We have a negative recommendation from the committee, but a negative recommendation from the committee is 20 reps opinion, and next week, March 5th, we're going to get 400 reps opinion on the bill, and we're anticipating quite an interesting floor fight. People on both sides will have some very interesting things to say.
What kind of opposition have you been getting? The people who are voting no on this, what have their reasonings been?
Well, of course, we all know that marijuana is a gateway drug. That first puff of a marijuana cigarette leads you down the path to insanity, criminality, and even death, if we learn from the movie Reefer Madness. And there's a version of that's still alive in people's minds. They've heard the word gateway so many times. Of course, that's irrelevant to our bill because people are going to try marijuana regardless of what the laws are. That's one thing that's been proven, you know, throughout the last 100 years. So there's the gateway argument, we hear that a lot, and then there's the argument that, well, yeah, but I think it'll send the wrong message to young people. We have to send the right message to young people. And if the right message to young people is that we need to have laws on the books that we can't possibly enforce and penalties on the books that just don't make sense and are out of proportion with the nature of the offense, then I don't think, that's a conversation that I hope we have pretty frequently, but it certainly doesn't send the wrong message to young people.
Now, there have also been a lot of people in support of this bill who most people wouldn't really expect, including law enforcement officers.
Absolutely. We've had people come out of the woodwork that have been really great. Notably, Superintendent Richard Van Wickler from Cheshire County Department of Corrections. He's a recently joined member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and he really turned a lot of heads with his testimony. He was very, very effective. He's become a very passionate spokesperson for drug policy reform across the board. We look forward to this. Is just a starting point. We sure hope we're going to win with this bill, but it's really a tiny incremental reform. We're really opening the can on a much larger discussion about policies and trying to find drug and marijuana policies that make sense for our state in the 21st century.
All right, so this bill is going to be heard before the entire House on March 5th in just a couple days here. If people want to have their opinions heard before it goes to vote, how do they go about contacting their reps? Is there a way to make it easier for them?
Absolutely. This is absolutely everybody's government. We're all part of this, supposedly consent of the governed and, that sort of thing. So this is the time to participate. It's not just voting once every couple of years. It's getting in contact with your reps when a piece of legislation comes along that you care about. To do that, go to nhcommonsense.org. There's plenty of information. There's a link to the Who's My Legislator function of the State House. It's very easy to find out who your reps are, what their phone numbers and email addresses are, and absolutely, this is the time to share your opinions with your elected officials.
All right, Matt, always, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot for coming on Free Minds TV.
Hey, thank you, Toby.
nhcommonsense.org, and there's a tab right up there that says 1623, so if you want to learn more about how to contact your reps, let them know what your opinion on this bill is. It's right there. Encourage everyone to be in contact with their representatives because these guys are going to pass laws regardless, and whether your opinion's heard, it's another story. It's up to you to let your representatives know how you feel about certain issues.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we do have some representatives in Congress too, and we have to keep an eye on what they're doing, let them know how we would like them to vote. And this for a Downsizer Dispatch this week, from downsizedc.org. Ron Paul has introduced a new health care bill, and it's called the Comprehensive Health Care Reform Act. Basically what he wants to do is, and what the bill does, is it gets the free market back into medicine. Because right now, about half of all health care costs are paid by the government, which tends to drive the prices up. And the prices are dictated by insurance companies and government insurance like Medicaid and Medicare. And the government tends to overpay, which drives up the pricing schedule. And if you consider that LASIK eye surgery, for example, a lot of people worry that prices would still go up and there wouldn't be aid for those who need the help. But when you consider LASIK eye surgery as something that's it's relatively new and it didn't get any government funding, and insurance generally won't pay for it because it's to correct eyesight, so it's not a critical procedure. Prices have dropped from about $2,100 in '99 to about $1,600 in 2004, which is a big difference. And I believe it's dropped even more now. I think it's around $1,000 generally. I mean, there's different types of LASIK. And you can I've heard ads on the radio that offer financing options. So it's really become a lot easier to pay for a surgery like that because the market has driven prices down through competition. The rest of healthcare doesn't work that way right now. So in a lot of ways, it's government that's created our healthcare crisis, and people are turning to more government spending to fix it. But in reality, that will probably even cause more problems.
All right. Well, if people want to have their opinion be heard on this, you can log on to downsizedc.org, and easy from there. Just make an account, and it takes about 3 seconds to let your reps know how you feel about the issue. All right, when we come back, can Canadian troops come to America and enforce martial law on American public? I don't know. We'll tell you a lot more about this when we come back. I'm Toby Islam from freemindstv.com. We challenge you on a regular basis to think outside the box. I'm here in Concord, New Hampshire, in the House chambers. This is where 435 members of the House debate and make laws that control all of our lives. But how much do you have to say about it? Do you let your New Hampshire representatives hear from you? I'm here to encourage you to speak on the laws that are created that run your lives. Call your representatives. Let them know which bills you like and don't like, because let me tell you this, they're going to pass the bills regardless. Whether your voice is heard on it is a different story. Welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, I am Toby Islam.
And I'm Nick Michaelevich.
All right. Well, we know about what Kami Comitatus is. It means that American soldiers are not going to enforce police-like tactics on the American people here in America. Well, they have some help with this now. Canadian troops are now going to be allowed to come into America and enforce martial law on American people in the time of a crisis or an emergency. Canadian and the U.S. have signed an agreement that paves the way for the militaries from either nation to send troops across each other's borders during an emergency. So this is something that is unprecedented. In the past, it's very frowned upon for troops to be used for police actions. Now they're saying not only American troops, but Canadian troops can come into America and enforce laws?
Well, it's also a first in that we've never allowed foreign forces to be on our soil. I mean, ever to enforce laws on our soil. And I know Canada might not seem foreign to a lot of people watching, but it is still a separate country, and it really is a threat to our sovereignty when we start to allow other countries. I mean, granted, the Congress would have to agree, but when we start to allow other countries' troops in to enforce our laws, it's a very disturbing precedent, and it does lend some credence to the idea that both in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, there are politicians pushing for some kind of a North American Union or some kind of agreement that creates something like the EU in North America.
Yeah, it really kind of blends the countries together. And people from Canada aren't pleased because it's the same way. We're going to be lending our troops to Canada if they have a crisis or need our troops. Their troops can call upon us, which it also, under U.S. law, American troops can't be controlled by another force. So the Canadians are really upset because they go, well, American forces will be used to assist Canadian troops, but they'll be under American control. So that's good for us, sort of, but it's not good for us to be having our troops go to other countries and allowing other troops to be coming into our country. I'd be outraged enough if I saw American troops in the streets enforcing police laws. I'd be extremely upset if I saw Canadian troops wandering through the streets, marching through the streets, enforcing American laws or Canadian laws, whatever it is that our diktats, lords, and emperors, or president and Congress and such, deem fit to have them do.
Right, and the problem is they're trying to blur the line between Canada and the U.S. as far as governments go, but not for us. I mean, recently it's been made so that you need a passport to get through, even going across by land to Canada and Mexico. But of course, they want to be able to kind of mix and match between the government of the U.S. and Canada. So on one hand, they're saying we need to protect our borders and our sovereignty. But what sovereignty do you have when you say it's acceptable for foreign militaries to patrol your streets? It doesn't make much sense. And it's not the right direction to be going in. They're restricting the people and allowing the government to do more with fewer restrictions.
Yeah, and not a lot has been said on this. This wasn't breaking news on CNN or anything. It's just something that sort of was passed and kind of not noticed. People aren't talking about it when this really is a big deal. There will be disasters in the future in America. It's inevitable, or in Canada, and are we just going to wake up and be like, oh, this is okay? It seems like this should be there should have been discussion on this. People should know about what's going on with this, rather than it just happening. It's passed. No one really knows about it.
Right. I mean, I guess it's because a lot of these changes that we've seen over the last few years, especially since September 11th, have been modest step-by-step changes. On its face, it doesn't seem like a big deal to most people that if there's a state of emergency, we can let the Canadians in now, and that's legal. But when you start adding up all the little changes that have been made that have eaten away at civil liberties, protections, and just, you know, traditional rule of law, it adds up to a lot in the aggregate. The problem is people see something like this and they say, well, that's not a huge deal. It's, you know, just for disasters and it's just Canada. But it sets a precedent, and next it might be Mexico will be able to send troops and vice versa. And, you know, it expands outwards, and, you know, it really creates a monster in the total sum of the parts.
Well, speaking of spreading our troops across the globe, what's going on in Iraq recently, Nick?
Well, we've heard a lot of reports that have been saying that the surge is working, and it's certainly true that violence for the moment is down a lot. I think even in Baghdad, 60 to 80%.
Good news, right?
Good news, but the problem is how long will it last? And there's some evidence now that Iraq, we're paying off the different factions in Iraq. We've got Sunnis, we've got Shiites, and Kurds, and they all have their own different ethnic and religious groups, and they've been fighting with each other. That's what the violence in Iraq, a lot of it was based on.
Civil war, almost.
Right. They were attacking the Americans, but it was a sectarian conflict. And we've kind of allied ourselves with the Sunni commanders. We've given them money, weapons, training, and that's kept things stable for now. But they still don't like the Shiite government, and the Kurds don't like any other. They don't even want to be part of Iraq, and they're kind of having their own border dispute with Turkey right now. So it's kind of like Yugoslavia before it flew apart. They're radicalized ethnic groups, and they don't want to live in the same country with each other. Or if they do, one group wants to rule over the other ones. And it's just a very unstable situation that likely is going to blow up once we cut off the money and the support for different factions.
Right. We're pretty much paying these people off to not fight each other, which is working to keep the violence down in Iraq. There has been, like you said, a lot of evidence that shows there is less violence, but it's because we're paying them off. And so they're basically stockpiling money and weapons. We also sell plenty of weapons, stockpiling these so that when we do pull out or we stop giving them money, stop bribing them not to fight each other, they'll have a whole lot of bombs, guns, and ammunition to blow the crap out of each other.
Right. Well, and for the most part, we're talking about warlords here. I mean, it's a very tribal, almost medieval system by our standards. And there's no guarantee that even if we keep paying them, keep giving them weapons, that, you know, whether it's a Sunni or a Shiite or a Kurd, some commander of a military group somewhere isn't going to get the idea in their head to just go ahead and try to take over anyway. And, you know, there's no side that you can say is good. I mean, they've all got problems. They're all trying to take over people and rule over people. And it's just a mess that we're in the middle of. And, you know, we might be able to fix it, but it would require probably partitioning Iraq into, and it's not that simple. It's not like there's one area that's all Shiites and one area Sunni and one area Kurds. They do mix together. It's like India and Pakistan when they finally separated. It wasn't so simple that you could just say, well, you know, the Muslims will be here, the Hindus will be here. Yeah. Drawing lines is very difficult, and you know, this is a country that one of the reasons it was held together, as awful as he was that there was Saddam Hussein, and you had one dictator. There was nobody that he would let get strong enough to pose a threat to him, and that's why you have seen Iraq stay as one country all these years. Is simply because it wasn't drawn up properly. The British just drew lines on the map, which they like to do without much concern for differences, and now we're stuck in the middle of it. And it's a very, understandably, it's a difficult situation to get out of.
Right. Well, I know one thing. I don't know what we should do about the Iraq situation, but I think it's time that America get out of the situation. We're not helping it. We're arming these people, and who knows what it's going to do in the end. What we need to do is stay out of other people's business. Yes, there's a civil war going on, and there's not much we can do about it except waste our soldiers' lives and our taxpayers' money and get more in debt. So what we need to do is get out of there, let them figure out their differences on their own, and maybe apologize for ever getting involved in the first place.
Well, and you know, people are worried that Iraq will boil over if we leave, but really all we're doing is delaying our exit. And when we finally do leave, likely these tensions will still be there. The pot will just be on simmer until we finally do leave, which eventually we're going to have to do for monetary reasons anyway.
Yeah, we can't stay there forever like John McCain wants.
So we can either spend a bunch of our money and lose a bunch of American lives and have the thing blow up in another 10 or 15 years, or we could leave now And who knows, maybe it won't be quite as bad as it could be.
I hope not. You can only hope for the best and hope that we get out of it and they're no longer a part of it. All right, when we come back, I've got an article that Nick hasn't seen yet. He's got one that I haven't seen yet, and we're going to be talking about a whole lot more when we come back right after this.
Want more Free Minds TV? Log on to freemindstv.com 24 hours of the day or night for video archives of past shows and bonus videos, show content, and our audio podcasts. You will also find pictures, more information about the show, guests and interviews, Liberty links, the law, and of course, contact information. Reach us by email at fmtv@freemindstv.com or leave us a voicemail on our talkback line by calling 206-600-2982. All this and more at freemindstv.com.
Welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, I'm Toby Island.
And I'm Nick Michaelevich.
All right, Nick, you've got an article that I haven't looked at yet. What are we looking at this week?
We're looking at the terror watch list in the United States. And earlier we've reported that there were 700,000 names on the terror watch list, and that's U.S. citizens.
That makes it almost useless, doesn't it?
It makes it almost useless. But according to the Justice Department's own reports, it was growing, back in September when they reported that, it was growing by about 20,000 names a month. So the estimate right now is that there are about 900,000 names on it. No one's really sure because it's a semi-secret list. But they were able to confirm some of the people who are on the list. And there are journalists on there. The tendency is to have liberal journalists on the list, some college students, foreign leaders. The president of Bolivia is on the list. And Bolivia is not particularly antagonistic towards the U.S. Democratic senators, Ted Kennedy's on the list,
really?
On the terror watch list.
He's sort of a terrorist in some facts.
Well, I mean, you've got Democratic congressmen, John Lewis from Georgia, there's some others, and Republican congressmen from Alaska are also on the list, so it's not just Democrats. And really what you're seeing here is an abuse of the terror watch list. I think we can safely assume that there aren't 900,000 people we really need to be concerned about being terrorists in the United States. And what this does is two-edged. It allows the government to discriminate against people who aren't terrorists,
right,
who probably aren't even criminals. They might just have differing political views. So it's a way to crack down on dissent. And it also inflates lists, so it dilutes the amount of time we can spend on the real terrorists.
Well, yeah, I'd have to say so, and it actually affects more than 900,000 people or whatnot because of duplicate names and stuff. There's some people that might be hundreds of people with the same exact name, so these people are unfairly getting discriminated against when they show up at airports, as far as I know.
Yeah, at airports it does affect you as far as the no-fly list goes. It gets you extra screenings, and there's really no reason to have that many names on it.
No.
And it's scary that the government is categorizing that many people as potential terrorists.
Well, it's what they do when we give them unlimited resources and allow them to do whatever in the name of protection, because we need to be protected, right? Well, one thing it is doing, it might be hurting our dollar a little bit, so much that Greenspan is telling Gulf to drop the dollar. Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the U.S. Central Bank, or Fed, has said that inflation rates of Gulf states, which are reaching near record levels, would fall significantly if oil producers drop their U.S. dollar pegs, meaning if they stop dealing in their oil in dollars, their inflation would go way down, because every time we're affected when the Fed drops our rates, it's affecting people in the Gulf and affecting them because their oil is based in dollar amounts. So the Greenspan, who was very well known for money policy and that knowing the dollar very well, is urging other countries to drop the dollar. Is this telling us that the dollar really could be in huge trouble?
Well, I think so. I mean, obviously the dollar's dropping, and if they're going to drop the dollar peg, it's because the dollar's losing value because of inflation. And oil prices are stable, if not increasing, in terms of their the actual value of oil. And for years, what's held up the dollar, even without the gold standard, is we've had this effective tie between oil and the dollar.
Yeah, so people want to deal in it. Right. Investors want to go for something that's universal, right?
Right, and it's there's been this kind of tie between oil's traded in dollars, modern economy needs oil, so you need to use dollars to buy oil,
right.
Keeps the dollar strong. Well, we've spent so many dollars, printed so many, that even with that hedge, it's weakened the dollar. And we're kind of coming to an end of a period where we have strong paper money. Now we're going to be like the rest of the world with weak paper money.
Well, it's bad news. I saw that silver has actually broken the $19 mark. Gold well over $9.50 now. Something that just 5-10 years ago, these precious metals were way down, and now they're way up. It doesn't mean exactly that the dollar is going downhill, but it's a good sign of the times. Gold pretty much has kept up with the dollar throughout history. Silver pretty much has done the same, and watching them go up and up and up like this, it's a little nerve-wracking. It says that we might be in for some kind of a recession or something like that in the future.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a recession and not anything worse than a recession. But it's hard to speculate, but everything's more, not just precious metals and oil, but people are noticing that prices are going up. And the real reason that prices are going up largely is because just the dollar is being devalued, more being printed. Your dollar doesn't go as far, and your paychecks don't keep up with it. Some people say, well, your paychecks will go up with inflation because
mine hasn't gone up.
Yeah, but it lags way behind, and even if it does catch up eventually, it puts people at a tremendous disadvantage who are in the lower and middle classes right now.
Well, one thing people could do is maybe start looking towards the Free State Project, which is right here in New Hampshire. Speaking of, we are going to be broadcasting from PorcFest 2008, which is the annual Freedom Festival that goes on. It's going on in Gunstock. We'll be there broadcasting live on June 14th of 2008. And what we need is a viewer help on this one. It's going to cost us about $500 to get up there. We need to bring up the entire studio and a ton of equipment. So if people would like to help us out, broadcast live from PorcFest 2008, log on to our website at freemindstv.com, and you can donate from there. We make it easy. You can either send checks, money orders, donate with PayPal, or Google Checkout, whichever way works best for you. But it would really help us out, help us reach our goal, and get the message of freedom and liberty, this message, out to more people. We'd also like to invite you to become a show sponsor. We're aired out of Cheshire TV in Keene, New Hampshire, but we also send our show out to other stations across New Hampshire and New England. It costs about $10 a month to send one of these to get our show on another station. If you'd like to help out, log on to freemindstv.com, click on Show Sponsor, and you can learn a lot more from there. Well, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
We'll be back next week with an all-new show. Thanks a lot, and join us at freemindstv.com.
Especially where your clothes do not cover you. No matter where we live, in the city or the country, we must be ready all the time for the atomic bomb. Duck and cover. That's the first thing to do. Duck and cover. The next important thing to do after that is to stay covered until the danger is over. Yes, we must all get ready now so we know how to save ourselves if the atomic bomb ever explodes near us. If you do not know just what to do, ask your teacher when this film is over. Discuss what you could do in different places if a bomb explodes. Older people will help us as they always do, but there might not be any grown-ups around when the bomb explodes. Then, you're on your own.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash?